Sherlock Holmes, with Edward Petherbridge as Sherlock Holmes and David Peart as Dr. John H. Watson. This is Episode 5 of The Hound of the Baskervilles. And Dr. Watson has traveled to Devonshire, quietly representing Sherlock Holmes in the matter of the Baskerville family curse. A spectral hound is said to threaten the family heirs, the newest of which is Sir Henry Baskerville. Sir Henry has taken the title on the death of Sir Charles Baskerville, which may or may not have been from natural causes. Holmes has been enlisted by the family friend, Dr. James Mortimer, to watch over Sir Henry as he assumes his new responsibilities. At first, Holmes is skeptical, but when Sir Henry receives an anonymous warning message and is shadowed in London by a stranger in a cab, the great detective comes to believe that there are indeed deep waters here. A pressing caseload prevents him from making the journey to Baskerville Hall, and so Watson is enlisted to stand in his place. As he sees Watson off, Holmes reviews with him the list of suspicious characters. First on the list is the family butler and his wife, the Barrymores.
Then there is the groom at the hall, if I remember right. There are two moorland farmers. There is our friend Dr. Mortimer, whom I believe to be entirely innocent. And there is his wife, of whom we know nothing. There is this naturalist, Stapleton. And there is his sister, who is said to be a young lady of attraction. There is Mr. Franklin of Laughter Hall, who is also an unknown factor. And there are one or two other neighbors. These are the folk who must be your very special study.
Once Watson arrives in Devonshire, he has ample reason to keep Barrymore at the head of his list.
Already round this pale-faced, handsome, black-bearded man, there was gathering an atmosphere of mystery and of gloom. It was he who had been the first to discover the body of Sir Charles, and we had only his word for all the circumstances which led up to the old man's death. Was it possible that it was Barrymore, after all, whom we had seen in the cab in Regent Street? The beard might well have been the same.
While returning from a walk to the village post office to deliver a written report to Holmes, Watson is stopped by Baskerville's neighbor Stapleton. We join Episode 5 of The Hound of the Baskervilles. Edward Petherbridge is Sherlock Holmes.
When Mortimer told me your name, he could not deny your identity. If you are here, then it follows that Mr. Sherlock Holmes is interesting himself in the matter. I am naturally curious to know what view he may take.
I'm afraid I cannot answer that question.
May I ask if he is going to honor us with a visit himself?
He cannot leave town at present. He has other cases which engage his attention.
Pity. He might throw some light on that which is so dark to us. But as to your own researches, if there is any possible way in which I can be of service to you, I trust that you will command me. If I had any indication of the nature of your suspicions, or how you propose to investigate the case, I might perhaps even now give you some aid or advice.
I assure you that I am simply here upon a visit to my friend Sir Henry, and that I need no help of any kind.
Excellent. You are perfectly right to be wary and discreet. I am justly reproved for what I feel was an unjustifiable intrusion, and I promise you that I will not mention the matter again. A moderate walk along this moor path brings us to Merripit House. Perhaps you will spare an hour that I may have the pleasure of introducing you to my sister?
Oh, well, I would be most honored.
It is a wonderful place, the moor. You never tire of it. You cannot think the wonderful secrets which it contains. It is so vast, and so barren, and so mysterious.
You know it well, then?
Oh, I've only been here for 2 years. The residents would call me a newcomer. We came shortly after Sir Charles settled. But my tastes led me to explore every part of the country road. And I should think that there are few men who know it better than I do.
Is it so hard to know?
Very hard. You see, for example, this great plain to the north here, with the queer hills breaking out of it.
Mm.
Do you observe anything remarkable about that?
It would be a rare place for a gallop.
You would naturally think so. And the thought has cost folk their lives before now.
Really?
You notice those bright green spots scattered thickly over it?
Yes, they seem more fertile than the rest.
That is the great Grimpen Mire. A false step yonder means death to man or beast. Only yesterday I saw one of the moor ponies wander into it. He never came out. I saw his head for quite a long time craning out of the bog, but it sucked him down at last. Even in dry seasons it is a danger to cross it, but after these autumn rains it is an awful place. And yet I can find my way to the very heart of it and return alive. There is another of those miserable ponies.
Good God.
The mire has him. 2 in 2 days, and many more perhaps, for they get in the habit of going there in the dry weather and never know the difference until the mire has them in its clutch. It is a bad place, the great Grimpen Mire.
And they say you can penetrate it.
Yes, there are 1 or 2 paths which a very active man can take. I have found them out.
But why should you wish to go into so horrible a place?
Well, you see the hills beyond? They are really islands, cut off on all sides by the impassable mire, which has crawled round them in the course of years. That is where the rare plants and the butterflies are, if you have the wit to reach them.
I shall try my luck someday.
For God's sake, put such an idea out of your mind. Your blood would be upon my head. I assure you that there would not be the least chance of you coming back alive. It is only by remembering certain complex landmarks that I am able to do it.
What's that?
Queer place, the moor.
No, but what is it?
Peasants say it is the Hound of the Baskervilles calling for its prey. I've heard it once or twice before, but never quite so loud.
You're an educated man. You don't believe such nonsense as that. What do you think is the cause of so strange a sound?
Bogs make queer noises sometimes. It is the mud settling or the water rising or something.
No. That was a living voice.
Well, perhaps it was. Did you ever hear a bittern booming?
No, I never did.
It is a very rare bird, practically extinct in England now. But all things are possible upon the moor. Yes, I should not be surprised to learn that what we have heard is the cry of the last of the bitterns.
It's the weirdest, strangest thing that I ever heard in my life.
Yes, it's rather an uncanny place altogether. Look at the hillside yonder. What do you make of those?
What are they? Sheep pens?
No, they are the homes of our worthy ancestors. Prehistoric man lived thickly on the moor, and as no one in particular has lived there since, we find all his little arrangements exactly as he left them. These are his wigwams with the roofs off. You can even see his hearth and his couch if you have the curiosity to go inside.
But it's quite a town. When was it inhabited?
Neolithic man. No date.
What did he do?
He grazed his cattle upon these slopes, and he learned to dig for tin when the bronze sword began to supersede the stone axe. Look at the great trench in the opposite hill. That is his mark. Yes, you will find some very singular points about the moor, Dr. Watson. Excuse me, an instant. It is surely Cyclopedies.
A small fly or moth had fluttered across our path, and in an instant Stapleton was rushing with extraordinary energy and speed in pursuit of it. To my dismay, the creature flew straight for the great mire, but my acquaintance never paused for an instant, bounding from tuft to tuft behind it, his green net waving in the air, his grey clothes and jerky, zigzag, irregular progress made him not unlike some huge moth himself. I was standing watching his pursuit with a mixture of admiration for his extraordinary activity and fear lest he should lose his footing in the treacherous mire, when I heard the sound of steps, and turning round found a woman near me upon the path. She had come from the direction in which the plume of smoke indicated the position of Merrypit House, but the dip of the moor had hid her until she was quite close. I could not doubt that this was the Miss Stapleton of whom I had been told.
Straight back to London instantly.
Why should I go back?
I cannot explain. For God's sake, do what I ask you. Go back and never set foot upon the moor again.
But I have only just come.
Man, can you not tell when a warning is for your own good? Go back to London. Start tonight. Get away from this place at all costs.
Shh.
My brother is coming. Not a word of what I have said. Would you mind getting that orchid for me? Among the mare's tails yonder? We are very rich in orchids on the moor. Though, of course, you are rather late to see the beauties of the place.
Hello, Beryl.
Jack, you're very hot.
Yes, I was chasing a cyclopedes. He is very rare and seldom found in the late autumn. What a pity that I should have missed him. You have introduced yourselves, I can see.
Well,
I was telling Sir Henry that it was rather late for him to see the true beauties of the moor.
Why, who do you think this is?
Well, I imagine that it must be Sir Henry Baskerville.
No. Only a humble commoner, but his friend. My name is Dr. Watson.
We have been talking at cross purposes.
Why, you had not very much time for talk.
Oh, I talked as if Dr. Watson were a resident instead of being merely a visitor. It cannot much matter to him whether it is early or late for the orchids. But you will come on, will you not, and see Mary Peart?
Yes. A short walk brought us to it. A bleak moorland house. Once the farm of some grazier in the old prosperous days, but now put into repair and turned into a modern dwelling. An orchard surrounded it, but the trees, as is usual upon the moor, were stunted and nipped, and the effect of the whole place was mean and melancholy. We were admitted by a strange, wizened, rusty-coated old manservant, who seemed in keeping with the house.
Queer spot to choose, is it not?
Oh.
And yet we managed to make ourselves fairly happy. Did we not, Beryl?
Quite happy.
I had a school. It was in the North Country.
Mm-hmm.
The work to a man of my temperament was mechanical and uninteresting. But the privilege of living with the young, of helping to mold those young minds and of impressing them with one's own character and ideals, was very dear to me. However, the fates were against us. A serious epidemic broke out in the school, and 3 of the boys died. It never recovered from the blow, and much of my capital was irretrievably swallowed up. And yet, if it were not for the loss of the charming companionship of the boys, I could rejoice over my own misfortune. For, with my strong taste for botany and zoology, I find an unlimited field of work here. And my sister is as devoted to nature as I am. All this, Dr. Watson, has been brought upon your head by your expression as you surveyed the moor out of our window.
It certainly did cross my mind that it might be a little dull. Less for you, perhaps, than for your sister.
No. I am never dull.
We have books. We have our studies. And we have interesting neighbors. Dr. Mortimer is a most learned man in his own line.
Oh.
Poor Sir Charles was also an admirable companion. We knew him well, and miss him more than I can tell. Do you think that I should intrude if I were to call this afternoon and make acquaintance of Sir Henry?
No, I am sure that he would be delighted.
Then perhaps you would mention that I propose to do so. We may, in our humble way, do something to make things more easy for him, until he becomes more accustomed to his new surroundings. Will you come upstairs, Dr. Watson, and inspect my collection of Lepidoptera? I think it is the most complete one in the southwest of England. By the time you have looked through them, lunch will be almost ready.
But I was eager to get back to my charge. The melancholy of the moor, the death of the unfortunate pony, the weird sound which had been associated with the grim legend of the Baskervilles, all these things tinged my thoughts with sadness. Then, on top of these more or less vague impressions, there had come the definite and distinct warning of Miss Stapleton, delivered with such intense earnestness that I could not doubt that some grave and deep reason lay behind it. I resisted all pressure to stay for lunch, and I set off at once upon my return journey, taking the stony path by which we had come. It seems, however, that there must have been some shortcut for those who knew it, for before I had reached the road, I was astounded to see Miss Stapleton sitting upon a rock by the side of the track. Her face was beautifully flushed with her exertions, and she held her hand to her side.
I have run all the way in order to cut you off, Dr. Watson. I had not even time to put on my hat. I must not stop where my brother may miss me. I wanted to say to you how sorry I am about the stupid mistake I made in thinking that you were Sir Henry. Please forget the words I said, which have no application whatever to you.
Ah, but I can't forget them, Miss Stapleton. I am Sir Henry's friend, and his welfare is a very close concern of mine. Tell me why it was that you were so eager that Sir Henry should return to London.
A woman's whim, Dr. Watson. When you know me better, you will understand that I cannot always give reasons for what I say or do.
No, I remember the thrill in your voice. I remember the look in your eyes. Please be frank with me, Miss Stapleton. For ever since I have been here, I have been conscious of shadows all round me. Life has become like that great Grimpen mire, with little green patches everywhere into which one may sink, with no guide to point the track. Now tell me what it was that you meant, and I will promise to convey your warning to Sir Henry.
You make too much of it, Dr. Watson. My brother and I were very much shocked by the death of Sir Charles. We knew him very intimately, for his favorite walk was over the moor to our house. He was deeply impressed with the curse which hung over his family. And when this tragedy came, I naturally felt that there must be some grounds for the fears which he had expressed. I was distressed, therefore, when another member of the family came down to live here, and I felt that he should be warned of the danger which he will run. That was all which I intended to convey.
But what is the danger?
You know the story of the Hound.
Oh, I do not believe in such nonsense.
But I do. If you have any influence with Sir Henry, take him away from a place which has always been fatal to his family. The world is wide. Why should he wish to live at the place of danger?
Because it is the place of danger. That is Sir Henry's nature. I fear that unless you can give me some more definite information than this, it would be impossible to get him to move.
I cannot say anything definite, for I do not know anything definite.
I would ask you one more question, Miss Stapleton. If you meant no more than this when you first spoke to me, why should you not wish your brother to overhear what you said? There is nothing to which he or anyone else could object.
My brother is very anxious to have the hall inhabited, for he thinks that it is for the good of the poor folk upon the moor. He would be very angry if he knew that I had said anything which might induce Sir Henry to go away. But I have done my duty now, and I will say no more. I must get back, or he will miss me and suspect that I have seen you. Goodbye.
But no. Baskerville Hall, October 13th. My dear Holmes, my previous letters and telegrams have kept you pretty well up to date as to all that has occurred in this godforsaken corner of the world. Allow me now to bring you up to date with the latest events. There is strong reason to believe that the escaped convict Selden, known as the Notting Hill murderer, has got right away. A fortnight has passed since his flight, and nothing has been seen or heard of him, which is a considerable relief to the lonely householders of this district. Our friend the baronet is beginning to display a considerable interest in Miss Beryl Stapleton, and I am much mistaken if the feeling is not mutual. Her brother, however, does not seem to wish their intimacy to ripen into love, and I have several times observed that he has taken pains to prevent them from being tete-a-tete. Your instructions to me to never allow Sir Henry to go out alone will become very much more onerous if a love affair were to be added to our difficulties. Stapleton took us on an excursion across the moor to show us the spot where the legend of the wicked Hugo is supposed to have had its origin. The location was very gloomy. A short valley between rugged tors led to an open, grassy space, flecked over with white cotton grass. In the middle of it rose two great stones, worn and sharp at the upper end, until they looked like the huge, corroding fangs of some monstrous beast. Sir Henry was very much interested in the story. I have also met another neighbour of Baskerville Hall. He is Mr. Frankland of Laughter Hall, who has a passion for the British law and has spent a large fortune in litigation.
I think I must have spent about £15,000 in the Queen's Bench Division and another 20 in Chancery.
Are you finding that you profit by it?
Well, I think I could if I did not enjoy it so much. My problem seems to be that I'm equally ready to take up either side of the question. I sometimes find myself helping the other side.
It's no wonder you're finding this to be a costly amusement.
Here, have a look at this. I found this old document in the county library.
Oh, it appears to be in some kind of French.
Norman French. It sets out the medieval manorial rights for the villagers of Fernworthy.
Oh, you must be a considerable asset to the people here.
Oh.
Having somebody like you on their side would be a considerable weapon in the courts of law.
Well, it has been known for villagers to carry me down the main street in triumph, but they've also burned my effigy.
Why on earth would they do that?
I'm always changing my mind. One week I might shut up a right-of-way and defy the parish to open it. In the following week I might tear down the farmer's gate and declare that a path has existed there from time immemorial.
How many lawsuits have you got going at the moment?
7, I think. I've lost count. I must say, I am rather concerned that Dr. Mortimer has opened an ancient grave without the consent of the next of kin. I think I should apply for an injunction.
But he's engaged in archaeological research.
Well, that may well be the case, and I think it would make an interesting defense. There's sure to be a precedent. I'll go out of my way to help him.
Are you an astronomer as well?
Yeah.
I noticed you have a telescope on the roof.
When I am not reading the All England Law Report, I am a keen observer of the stars. But just recently, I've been keeping an eye on the moor for that escaped convict.
Ah, yes.
Haven't seen him at all, but I did spot a farmer putting up a fence on common ground.
And now, having brought you up to date, let me end on that which is most important and tell you more about the Barrymores, and especially about the surprising development of last night. I explained to Sir Henry that your test telegram was worthless because there was no proof that Barrymore had received it himself. In his downright fashion, Sir Henry called his butler immediately to investigate.
Did the boy deliver it into your own hands?
No. I was in the box room at the time. My wife brought it up to me.
Did you answer it yourself?
No, I told my wife what to answer, and she went down to write.
Very well, Barrymore. That will be all.
I cannot quite understand the object of your question, Sir Henry. I trust that they do not mean that I have done anything to forfeit your confidence.
Not at all.
If you desire it, Master, I can give you my notice immediately, and we shall leave in the morning.
No, Barrymore. I meant nothing of the kind. On the contrary, your leaving would be a grave loss to me. In fact, I was wondering if you might like to have a look through my old wardrobe. Since I have received my new outfits from London, I would be happy for you to help yourself.
I'm most obliged, Sir Henry.
Last night, about 2 a.m, I was aroused by a stealthy step passing my room. I rose, opened my door, and peeped out. A long black shadow was trailing down the corridor. It was thrown by a man who walked softly down the passage with a candle held in his hand. He was in shirt and trousers with no covering to his feet. I could merely see the outline, but his height told me that it was Barrymore. He walked very slowly and circumspectly, and there was something indescribably guilty and furtive in his whole appearance. I could see from the glimmer of light through an open door that he had entered one of the rooms. It was unfurnished, and I observed him crouching at the window with the candle held against the glass. His profile was half turned towards me, and his face seemed to be rigid with expectation as he stared out into the blackness of the moor. For some minutes he stood watching intently. Then he gave a deep groan, and with an impatient gesture he put out the light. I thought I ought to inform you of my suspicions, even though they may be unfounded.
I knew that Barrymore walked about nights, and I had a mind to speak to him about it. 2 or 3 times I have heard his steps in the passage, coming and going, just about the hour you named.
Perhaps then he pays a visit every night to that particular window.
Perhaps he does. If so, we should be able to shadow him and see what he's after. I wonder what your friend Holmes would do if he were here.
I believe that he would do exactly what you now suggest. He would follow Barrymore and see what he did.
And we shall do it together.
But surely he would hear us.
The man is rather deaf, and in any case, we must take our chance of that. We'll sit up in my room tonight and wait until he passes. Now, here's my hat.
Ah.
What? Are you coming, Watson?
Well, that depends on whether you're going to the moor.
Yes, I am.
Well, you know what my instructions are. I'm sorry to intrude, but you heard how earnestly Holmes insisted that I should not leave you, and especially that you should not go alone upon the moor.
My dear fellow, Holmes, with all his wisdom, did not foresee some things which have happened since I have been on the moor. You understand me? I am sure that you're the last man in the world who would wish to be a spoilsport. I must go out alone.
I decided to follow Sir Henry at a discreet distance. I was able to make clear observations from a commanding hill. I saw him with Miss Stapleton on the moor path. They were walking slowly in deep conversation. I became aware that I was not the only witness to their moment of intimacy. A wisp of green caught my eye, and another glance showed me that it was Stapleton with his butterfly net. At this instant, Sir Henry suddenly drew Miss Stapleton to his side. His arm was around her, but it seemed to me that she was straining away from him with her face averted. He stooped his head to hers, and she raised one hand as if in protest. Next moment, I saw them spring apart and turn hurriedly round. Stapleton was the cause of the interruption. He was running wildly towards them, his absurd net dangling behind him. He gesticulated and almost danced with excitement in front of the lovers. It seemed to me that Stapleton was abusing Sir Henry, who offered explanations which became more angry as the other refused to accept them. The lady stood by in haughty silence. Finally, Stapleton turned upon his heel and beckoned in a peremptory way to his sister, who, with an irresolute glance at Sir Henry, walked off by the side of her brother.
A murderous family secret is revealed. That's next time on Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Hound of the Baskervilles, adapted for radio by Tim Crook and directed by Richard Shannon. Edward Petherbridge was Sherlock Holmes, with David Peart as Dr. John H. Watson. Other members of the cast were Stephen Thorne as Dr. Mortimer, Bill Roberts as Sir Henry Baskerville, Joe Dunlop as Barrymore, Alexandra Matthey as Miss Stapleton, and Jamie Ripman as Stapleton. Support for this program comes from National Public Radio member stations and NPR, whose contributors include LexisNexis, helping legal, business, and government professionals collect, manage, and use information, and the Lila Wallace Reader's Digest Fund, helping people to make the arts part of their everyday lives. I'm Steve Zakar. This is NPR, National Public Radio.